Chapter 182. Inside the Longevity Temple. The Emperor of Tang kept looking at the 6 tokens in front of him. These 6 tokens were very ordinary, and the texture was very rough. He couldn't see anything unusual about them. If it weren't for the fact that Su Qin had personally given them to him, the Emperor of Tang would never have looked at them. Third Brother said that if the 6 states don't agree to submit, take out the tokens. But why don't I see anything different about these 6 tokens? The Emperor of Tang looked at them for a long time and didn't find anything, so he stopped looking. The Emperor of Tang had absolute trust in Su Qin. Since Su Qin said so, there must be a reason for it. The Emperor of Tang pondered for a while and said, "Your Majesty." Eunuch Lu bowed and walked in. "You and the other 5 take these 6 tokens and go to the 6 states. Give them 2 choices, the Emperor of Tang said in a deep voice. 2 choices? Eunuch Lu raised his head and looked at the Emperor of Tang in confusion. That's right. Submit or die. If the 6 states don't agree, take out the tokens. The Emperor of Tang repeated Su Qin's words without missing a word. As you wish. Eunuch Lu's heart was heavy. Although he didn't know why the Emperor of Tang's attitude was so tough that he didn't even bother to talk about conditions and directly showed them 2 choices. In fact, in Eunuch Lu's view, these 2 choices were not so much persuading the 6 states to surrender, but angering them. But as a subject, of course he couldn't refuse the decree. So, Eunuch Lu called the other 5 eunuchs. Eunuch Lu glanced at the 5 eunuchs and said, "Now you all understand what His Majesty means. In this trip to the 6 states, our lives are a small matter, but the dignity of the Empire of Tang is a big matter. No matter how the 6 states force us, we can't back down." Eunuch Lu said word by word. On this trip to the 6 nations, Eunuch Lu was already prepared to face death with equanimity. Although he is a grade 1 great grandmaster, if he goes deep into the imperial palace of the 6 countries and has a tough attitude, he will definitely anger the 6 countries. Although the 6 countries do not dare to fight against the Empire of Tang, in order to vent their anger, it is not a problem for them to attack a grade 1 great grandmaster. The other 5 eunuchs looked at each other with heavy hearts. However, even at this time, they did not think of refusing. As eunuchs in the palace, their life and death depended on His Majesty. If His Majesty wanted them to live, they would live. If His Majesty wanted them to die, none of them would dare to live. Everyone will be given a token. If the 6 nations refuse, then take it out. Eunuch Lu followed His Majesty's instructions and handed the tokens to the 5 eunuchs. Finally, he also took a token and left the palace, heading to the 6 states. Nanming. The Imperial Palace. Ming Emperor sat on the dragon throne, his expression uncertain. "Do you think that person in Xianxia city will agree to my conditions?" Ming Emperor frowned and thought for a while, and then said, "Your Majesty, it's just a promise. My Nanming dominates the southeast. If Your Majesty does not intend to surrender, it will take at least 20 years for the Empire of Tang to pacify Nanming. A promise in exchange for 20 years of the Empire of Tang. How can they not agree?" The commander of the Bright Gown Guards said respectfully. "That's right." Ming Emperor nodded slightly. What he wanted was just a promise from the person in Xianxia city. It was not excessive at all. The Empire of Tang had no reason to refuse. At this time, a minister couldn't help but ask, what if the other party doesn't agree? When this came out, the Great Hall suddenly quieted down. Even Ming Emperor's expression became gloomy in an instant. "Don't agree? I've already made enough concessions." Ming Emperor glanced around. "If the Empire of Tang really doesn't agree, I'd rather fight to the death. At worst, I'll escape overseas and not stay on the mainland. There are countless overseas islands. With my navigation skills in Nanming, I can conquer some islands and then establish my own country. What's so difficult about that?" Ming Emperor's words were full of strong dominance. Nanming was close to the sea and often sent ships to explore the sea. Naturally, he had some understanding of the situation overseas. But in Ming Emperor's view, even if the Empire of Tang had a martial arts legend, Nanming was not without a way out. In the worst-case scenario, they would abandon the southern Ming dynasty's territory and flee overseas. Of course, if he had a choice, Ming Emperor would not choose this path. After all, life overseas was not as pleasant as life on the mainland. At this time, an imperial guard hurried into the Great Hall, stopped by Ming Emperor's ear, and whispered a few words. A smile appeared on Ming Emperor's face. He looked at the other officials in the Great Hall and said, "The envoy of the Empire of Tang is here." When the officials heard this, their eyes suddenly lit up. The Empire of Tang probably sent an envoy to Nanming at this time for this matter. "Let him in," Ming Emperor said lightly. A moment later, Eunuch Lu walked into the Great Hall. "Ming Emperor." Eunuch Lu cupped his hands slightly to Ming Emperor. It was neither too respectful nor impolite. "What's the Emperor of Tang's reply?" Ming Emperor was too lazy to talk nonsense and asked bluntly. "His Majesty told me." Eunuch Lu straightened his back and looked at Ming Emperor. "Oh." Ming Emperor looked at Eunuch Lu with interest. The rest of the officials also pricked up their ears and listened attentively. "Either submit," Eunuch Lu looked around and said, "or die." As soon as Eunuch Lu finished speaking, the whole Great Hall fell into a dead silence. A terrifying pressure slowly enveloped the whole Great Hall. After a long time, Ming Emperor slowly got up, looked down at Eunuch Lu, and said word by word, "Good. Very good. I didn't expect that the Emperor of Tang would dare to look down on me like this." Emperor Ming was infuriated. If the Emperor of Tang had refused him in a more tactful way, he would not have been so angry. Since the Emperor of Tang doesn't know what's good for him, I don't have to care about his feelings. Ming Emperor squeezed a few words from between his teeth. "Take all the gold and silver in the country, empty the national treasury, and go overseas with me." Once Ming Emperor took away all the gold and silver in Nanming, it would inevitably cause chaos among the people. But at this moment, Ming Emperor could not care about this. "As for you?" Ming Emperor looked coldly at Eunuch Lu and said, "Guards, take him down and kill him." As soon as Ming Emperor's voice fell, vaguely, several figures approached Eunuch Lu without making a sound. The aura of these figures is far beyond Grade 1. Obviously, they are all peak Grade 1 Great Grandmasters. Since the recovery of the Vitality Tide, not only have several peak Grade 1 Great Grandmasters been born in the Emperor of Tang's palace, but a large number of powerhouses have also been born in various countries. "You." Eunuch Lu's face turned pale. He only has Grade 1 strength. How can he stop several peak Grade 1 Great Grandmasters? Just as Eunuch Lu was about to fight to the death, he suddenly thought of the token on his body. The Emperor of Tang asked him to take out the token after Nanming refused, and now, it is obviously the time. Although Eunuch Lu did not know how an ordinary token could block so many powerhouses of Nanming, Eunuch Lu still did as the Emperor of Tang said. The next moment, Eunuch Lu took out the token, as if holding the most precious treasure, and raised it above his head. "You're acting recklessly. Do you think a mere token can save your life?" A trace of sarcasm appeared on Ming Emperor's face. He wanted to see Eunuch Lu get smashed into meat paste under the hands of several peak Grade 1 Great Grandmasters of Nanming. Wang! The token in Eunuch Lu's hands suddenly burst out with light, like a divine sun in the sky, bright and blazing, illuminating the entire Nanming Imperial Palace. At that moment, the whole world seemed to stop. In everyone's eyes, they vaguely saw an incomparably tall figure slowly raising his head, as if he was looking at them from a distance. "This is..." Ming Emperor only felt his hands and feet go cold, as if he had fallen into an abyss. Chapter 183. Nanming Imperial Palace. The Imperial Palace was majestic. Many Imperial guards were patrolling back and forth with sharp eyes. The person who just went in to see His Majesty should be the envoy of the Empire of Tang, right? An Imperial guard lowered his voice and asked cautiously. Apart from the envoy of the Empire of Tang, who else can see His Majesty at this time? Another Imperial guard next to him glanced around and replied casually. "So that's how it is." The Imperial guard who had just spoken nodded slightly. Suddenly, he thought of something and said with a worried tone, "I think that the envoy of the Empire of Tang is hiding his aura." He is obviously a grade 1 great grandmaster. If we let him go in to see His Majesty, what if he has evil intentions and wants to assassinate His Majesty? Assassinate? Another Imperial Guard's mouth cracked open, revealing a smile. You don't know His Majesty's means. Now, His Majesty has many powerhouses around him. There are even more than one peak grade 1 great grandmaster. If a mere grade 1 great grandmaster wants to assassinate His Majesty, it is tantamount to a fool's dream. The guard's expression was resolute, and he was absolutely certain. The Empire of Tang has a legend, but it is impossible for them to attack His Majesty from tens of thousands of miles away. My Nanming dominates the southeast and has millions of soldiers. How can the Empire of Tang bully us at will? The guard's face was filled with arrogance as he spoke word by word. The Imperial Guard who spoke first was shocked and felt that Nanming was indeed so. However, at this moment, a terrifying pressure came from the Great Hall and instantly enveloped the entire Nanming Imperial Palace. Under this pressure, all the Imperial Guards, palace maids and eunuchs knelt on the ground as if they were facing heaven's might. This is? The two Imperial Guards who were talking to each other were shocked. They looked at the hall where Emperor Ming was in disbelief. Inside the Great Hall, Ming Emperor, who originally looked at Eunuch Lu as if he was looking at a dead man, looked as if he had seen a ghost at this moment. The other civil and military officials also saw an unforgettable scene in their lives. The token held high by Eunuch Lu suddenly shone brightly. Amidst the endless light, a figure sitting cross-legged looked at them from an endless distance away. Boom! A monstrous pressure shrouded the imperial palace. From Ming Emperor to the civil and military officials, all knelt down, as if they could not bear even the gaze of this figure. You are? Emperor Ming was dumbstruck. He stammered, unable to speak. Never in his wildest dreams would he have thought that the token in Eunuch Lu's hand would be so resplendent and dazzling. Is it the legend of the Tang Empire? In the blink of an eye, Emperor Ming guessed something and his heart trembled. Is this a legend martial expert? Several peak grade 1 great grandmasters next to the Ming Emperor knelt and bowed their heads, not even daring to raise their heads. Originally, with the help of the recovery of the vitality tide, he stepped into the realm of peak grade 1 great grandmaster and thought that he was already standing at the top of the world. Even if he was still far inferior to a legend, he could at least look up a little. But now, let alone looking up at the legend of the Empire of Tang, they can't even bear the other party's shadow that is tens of thousands of miles away. The gap is too big. It's so big that an ant wants to look up at the vast sky. Compared with the shock and fear of the other people in the Great Hall, Eunuch Lu was completely dumbfounded. It's the imperial uncle. Eunuch Lu was overjoyed, and immediately bowed deeply towards the shadow in the endless light emerging from the token. At this moment, the token no longer needed Eunuch Lu to hold it. It floated in the air by itself. You dare to refuse? Su Qin slowly walked out of the endless light. This was just a wisp of divine sense he placed on the token. Although its power is far inferior to his real body, it has no problem suppressing the Nanming Imperial Palace. Since you refuse, then go to hell. Su Qin looked at Ming Emperor and slowly raised his right hand. At this moment, Ming Emperor only felt that his whole body was trembling to the extreme. The endless light in front of him gave him an unprecedented pressure. This was not the pressure of the level of power, but a kind of pressure of the essence of life. Ming Emperor immediately knew that if he continued to remain silent, he would probably never have to speak again. Your Excellency, I have something to say. Ming Emperor took a deep breath and shouted, Since Your Excellency has taken action, you must be very willing to see the Empire of Tang unify the world. But the world is vast. Even with a legend like Your Excellency, it will take at least decades for the Empire of Tang to unify the world. Su Qin stopped pressing his right hand and looked at Ming Emperor with interest. Seeing this, Ming Emperor was slightly happy and immediately continued, But if I live, I can help the Empire of Tang. At least, it won't take long for the Empire of Tang to unify the Ming Kingdom. Ming Emperor spoke very quickly, fearing that Su Qin would slap him. The Ming Kingdom dominated the southeast, and the situation in its territory was complicated. If it were not for Ming Emperor's suppression, it would have been in chaos. Therefore, if Ming Emperor was willing to take the initiative to sort out many forces for the Empire of Tang, it would definitely be of great help to the Empire of Tang in conquering Nanming. This was also why Ming Emperor dared to put forward the conditions when he knew that the Empire of Tang had a martial arts legend like Su Qin. Because Ming Emperor had enough value. Is that so? Su Qin's eyes were calm, and he said lightly, "Unfortunately, you think too highly of yourself." As soon as he finished speaking, Emperor Ming's body suddenly trembled, and then he turned into powder and disappeared. Surrender or die. Choose for yourself. After killing Ming Emperor with a thought, Su Qin looked at the others in the hall. After leaving these words, his figure disappeared, and the endless light suddenly converged into the token. "We surrender. I'm willing to submit. Your Excellency, don't kill me." All the officials were scared out of their wits. They knelt on the ground and cried to Eunuch Lu, or to be precise, to the token in Eunuch Lu's hand. Even ants would drag out their lives, let alone these officials who enjoyed high positions. After witnessing Ming Emperor turn into nothingness, these officials did not dare to think of resisting. Perhaps there were some loyal officials, but now the general situation was gone. If they dared to continue resisting, the outcome would not only be Ming Emperor turned into powder, but also the entire Nanming royal family. One day later, the new emperor of Nanming ascended the throne and immediately submitted a letter of surrender to the Empire of Tang. He was willing to submit to the rule of the Empire of Tang forever. At the same time, the other 6 countries, including the northern Song and Tubo, submitted their letters of surrender almost at the same time and did not dare to make any more conditions. Under the suppression of absolute power, neither Ming Emperor nor the other kings dared to resist at all. As for the confidence they had and the value they showed, it was not worth mentioning. If they did not surrender, they would choose someone who was willing to surrender to be the emperor. The royal families of the 6 countries had many children, and there would always be some who did not have a backbone. Chapter 184. The Emperor of Tang's Palace. Inside the Long Life Temple. The Emperor of Tang listened to Eunuch Lu's report, and his heart was in turmoil. Especially when Eunuch Lu said that when the Ming Emperor was about to make a move, Su Qin's shadow suddenly walked out of the token, which was even more unbelievable. Third brother, how strong is the third brother? After a long time, the Emperor of Tang sighed softly and muttered to himself, "If Su Qin killed the imperial teacher of the Meng Yuan Empire and wiped out 5 million troops with a thought, it would be understandable. After all, since ancient times, the records left about legends were that they were not afraid of armies. As long as a legend was given time, he could destroy an army no matter how large it was. But now, Su Qin was sitting in the imperial palace, but he could suppress the 6 countries from tens of thousands of miles away and make them bow and surrender. This kind of means was simply unprecedented. The imperial uncle, Eunuch Lu swallowed his saliva and said in a shocked tone, "I'm afraid he is really invincible in the world." Invincible in the world. The Emperor of Tang was silent. Invincible in the world? Throughout the ages, no legend arhat could compare to Su Qin. However, with the third brother taking action, the 6 countries will no longer dare to play tricks and will all surrender. The Empire of Tang will unify the world. The Emperor of Tang smiled and said excitedly, "Congratulations, Your Majesty." Eunuch Lu immediately knelt on the ground and bowed. "No need to congratulate me. The unification of the world has little to do with me. If it weren't for the third brother, I wouldn't have been able to do it even if I were given another 100 years. The Emperor of Tang shook his head and said, "If it weren't for Su Qin's strength, let alone the 6 countries, even the small countries would not have surrendered." The world was unified. When the news spread from the Empire of Tang, the whole world was shocked. For hundreds of years, the various countries had been divided and at odds with each other, causing countless people to suffer. Now that the world was unified, it was a great thing for the people. At the very least, they didn't have to worry about when war would break out or if they would be forced to conscript. Furthermore, with the unification of the world, There were no more barriers between the various countries, and there was mutual commerce. This had a huge impact on the development of the world. Compared to the excited commoners, the original royal families of the Six Nations were not feeling very good. The surrender of the Six Nations was equivalent to giving up their royal status. From now on, there would be no other royal family in the world except for the Emperor of Tang's clan. Although the royal families of the Six Nations could still live comfortably with their past accumulations, some of the royal family members could not accept the loss of their royal status. His Majesty surrendered just like that? Moreover, the whole country surrendered. With such humiliation, they might as well give up their territory and expand beyond the Great Wall. That's right. If we go beyond the Great Wall, we can at least rebuild our country and maintain our royal status. However, surrendering is equivalent to handing our lives over to the Empire of Tang. No, we have to join forces to resist the imperial edict and ask His Majesty to take back the surrender. Many of the royal family members kept talking. They were very dissatisfied with the decision to surrender. In their opinion, even if they really wanted to surrender, they should let the Empire of Tang pay a price. They should not directly submit the surrender like now. What was this? The imperial cities of the various countries had not been breached yet. The armies of the various countries were still within their borders. How could he surrender without even putting up a fight? And it was such a complete surrender? When this voice reached the ears of the emperors of the various countries, they were so frightened that their faces turned pale. ****. The king of Tibet was shocked and furious. He almost crushed the wine cup in his hand. Those imperial family disciples were scattered in other places and had never personally experienced the kind of pressure that was contained in the token brought by the Tang Empire's envoy. If the king of Tibet had not surrendered without hesitation, he would have followed in the footsteps of several peak grade 1 great grandmasters around him. His body would have turned into powder and he would have been completely annihilated. Investigate. Investigate for me. Where did this kind of talk come from? The king of Tibet was furious. Finally, his expression became gloomy. Also, all the royal family members who spread this kind of talk should be given a cup of poisoned wine. If he had not seen the token brought by the envoy of the Empire of Tang, the king of Tibet might have had the same idea as these royal family members. At worst, he would just expand beyond the Great Wall. Even if he could not deal with the legends of the Empire of Tang, he could still hide. But after clearly experiencing the horror of the token, even if the king of Tibet had 10 times the courage, he would not have such absurd ideas. Escape beyond the Great Wall? How could he escape? Since the legend of Chang and city could kill them from tens of thousands of miles away with a token, even if he really escaped beyond the Great Wall, what was the use? And at this time, Su Qin, who made the various countries fearful and uneasy, was walking slowly on the green path of the imperial palace. The reason why Su Qin helped the Emperor of Tang to suppress the various countries was because of the recovery of the vitality tide. Heaven and earth will usher in an unprecedented great era. In this case, the Empire of Tang will clear the obstacles as much as possible and unify the world. For Su Qin, it will also save some trouble. Otherwise, if the vitality completely recovers and martial arts powerhouses are born one by one, it will give the 6 countries the confidence to form alliances and fight against the Empire of Tang. If the Empire of Tang can cope with it, then it will be fine, but what if it can't? Will Su Qin make a move or not? In order to avoid trouble in the future, Su Qin directly suppressed the various countries and made a move once to avoid countless moves in the future. Third brother, how strong are you? Su Yueyun, who was next to Su Qin, couldn't help but ask. As soon as these words came out, the 2 brothers Su Sungho and Su Qinyu couldn't help but pricked up their ears and listened carefully. In fact, not only them, but the whole world wanted to know how strong Su Qin was. First, he killed the Meng Yuan Empire's imperial teacher, who was also a legend, with 1 finger, then burned 5 million Meng Yuan soldiers, and finally, he divided into 6 and suppressed the various countries at the same time from tens of thousands of miles away. How strong is Su Qin? I have also read the ancient books collected by the Empire of Tang, and there are also records of legends. Su Yueyun whispered, legends can indeed ignore the army and fight 1 million, but if they want to destroy 5 million soldiers like Third Brother, it will take at least half a day. But Third Brother only took a while, and there is also the battle between legends, unlike the 9th grade martial arts, where life and death can be determined in a few moves. Legends involve the power of heaven and earth. Even if one side has the advantage and can defeat the other side, it is very difficult to kill the other side. It's not impossible, but at least it will take a lot of time to slowly wear down the power of heaven and earth. The more Su Yueyun said, the more shocked he was, and the more he felt that Su Qin was unfathomable. How strong am I? Su Qin stopped, looked up at the sky, and said lightly, I also want to know. P.S. There are still 2 more chapters. Don't panic, I'm writing and will post it around noon. Chapter 185. In fact, since stepping into the martial Dao, Su Qin has only used his full strength once. In the past, at the foot of the southern Witch Mountain, in order to resist the avalanche, Su Qin even pulled out a little bit of power from the golden Buddha that symbolized the inheritance of Buddha's palm. At that time, Su Qin did not hold back. It was precisely because of this that Su Qin grasped the qi between heaven and earth and finally successfully stepped into the realm of Venerable Arhat. However, at that time, Su Qin was just a peak grade 1 great grandmaster, and now Su Qin is already a 7th heavenly layer Venerable Arhat. The gap between the two is like the sky and an ant. Therefore, Su Qin really doesn't know how strong he is. The only thing he knows is that even a legend like the imperial teacher can't stop him from casually pointing his finger. Su Yueyun, Su Sungho, and Su Qingyu looked at each other with shock on their faces. If someone else said this, they would never believe it, but it was Su Qin who said it. After chatting for a while, the brothers Su Sungho and Su Qingyu ran back to the East Palace to continue cultivation. As for Su Yueyun, he returned to the Cunning Palace. The incarnation of the cave world has been busy these 2 days, so I didn't have a chance to sign in. Su Qin touched his chin, a thoughtful look in his eyes. The suppression of heaven and earth in the cave world is far beyond that of the human world. Even if Su Qin is at the 7th heavenly layer, he can't travel hundreds of miles in an instant. And to some extent, the current human world, with the intensification of the recovery of the world essence qi, has gradually begun to change towards the cave world. Of course, all this has no effect on Su Qin, because the speed at which he becomes stronger is faster than the recovery of the world essence qi. Unknowingly, Su Qin came to the front of the stargazing tower. Let's sign in here today. Su Qin's thoughts moved and he silently said, System, sign in. Congratulations to the host for signing in successfully. Obtained 5 Thunder God Fist. 5 Thunder God Fist? Su Qin's expression froze slightly. A fist technique related to thunder? Su Qin's thoughts fluctuated as one thought after another flashed through his mind. The next moment, Su Qin's understanding of the 5 Thunder God Fist merged into his mind. A moment later, Su Qin slowly opened his eyes, and there seemed to be thunder exploding in the depths of his eyes, bursting forth with billions of flashes of lightning. The 5 Thunder God Fist draws in the power of thunder and transforms it into the fist and palm. Every movement of the fist is like a thunder god descending upon the world, possessing boundless power. Su Qin was overjoyed. This 5 Thunder God Fist was almost beyond the level of martial arts. It could even trigger the power of thunder. Just this point alone was enough to rank it in the top 100 of Su Qin's martial arts. According to the comprehension instilled by the system, the 5 Thunder God Fist was divided into 5 levels. From low to high, they were respectively fighting, water, cloud, earth, and heaven. Although the first 4 levels were terrifying, it was still acceptable. The thunder that was triggered was only similar to lightning. But once it reached the heavenly thunder realm, it would be able to trigger real thunder. It was terrifying beyond compare. Of course, Su Qin valued this fist technique not because of its power. Although the 5 Thunder God Fist was terrifying, there were many divine arts that were comparable or even suppressed by Su Qin. What Su Qin was really interested in was a secret art in the heavenly thunder level of the Five Thunder God Fist. Once the Five Thunder God Fist was cultivated to the heavenly thunder realm, it would be able to trigger real thunder and use it to refine the body. Thunder Body Refining Art. Thunder Body Refining Art? Su Qin's eyes lit up. Ever since he entered the seventh heaven, his physical body's progress had almost stopped. Not to mention the fifth physical body transformation, it was extremely difficult to strengthen his physical body even slightly. Maybe I can use this Thunder Body Refining Art to transform my physical body and achieve the fifth physical body transformation? The more Su Qin thought about it, the brighter his mind became. If it was an ordinary martial artist, even a martial arts legend, they would be extremely cautious when it came to thunder. A martial arts legend was not afraid of ordinary thunder. But if a martial arts legend were to let down his physical defense and let the thunder enter his body, he would probably be terrified. Thunder represented destruction. If it entered the body, even a martial arts legend's body would collapse and he would die on the spot. The secret art in the Five Thunder God Fist allowed people to refine their bodies with thunder because it would constantly weaken the thunder that entered the body through the fist technique, so that it could achieve the effect of refining the body. However, even so, the Five Thunder God Fist warned later cultivators that it was best not to refine their bodies with thunder unless it was a last resort. Even if it was weakened by the fist technique, how terrifying was the power of thunder? If they were not careful, even if they did not die, their physical body would be damaged and they would be unable to improve for the rest of their lives. However, these so-called risks were nothing to Su Qin. Su Qin's body had already undergone 4 transformations and was far beyond other martial arts legends. Coupled with the divine ability of flesh and blood rebirth, unless Su Qin dived into the Sea of Thunder, there would be no problem. If I want to refine my body with thunder, I need at least the Five Thunder God Fist at the heavenly thunder level. Su Qin's thoughts turned quickly. Su Qin had already reached the heavenly thunder God Fist at the heavenly thunder level when the system instilled it. The only shortcoming was that although Su Qin had reached the heavenly thunder level of the Five Thunder God Fist, his physical body was not familiar with the Five Thunder God Fist. But this was easy to solve. Su Qin only needed to spend some time to master the Five Thunder God Fist. As for the rest, it was best to refine his body with thunder when dark clouds were gathering. Only then, when the power of thunder between heaven and earth gathered, could the body be stimulated to a greater extent and achieve the effect of thunder refining. Dark clouds? Su Qin thought to himself. Usually, this kind of weather would come once every 10 days or half a month. Su Qin only needed to wait patiently for a few days. Next, besides continuing to condense the micro-territory, Su Qin continued to familiarize himself with the Five Thunder Fist. The existence who created the Five Thunder Fist had obviously reached the mythical level and had reached the deepest level of the mythical level. Otherwise, how would an ordinary mythical level dare to think about thunder? Therefore, while Su Qin was familiarizing himself with the Five Thunder God Fist, all kinds of insights kept surging into his mind. It was as if Su Qin had truly become the creator, as he once again unleashed the Five Thunder God Fist step by step, shocking the world. Finally, a few days later, Xianxia city was covered by dark clouds, and a storm was brewing as if it was about to rain. Su Qin stood above Xianxia city and looked up at the endless dark clouds. Light blue lightning flashed past, and it traveled thousands of miles in the blink of an eye, bursting forth with destructive power. Compared to heaven and earth, the power of an individual is ultimately insignificant. Su Qin sighed softly, and his expression was slightly solemn. He slowly raised his right hand, clenched his palm into a fist, and gently punched forward. Boom! In an instant, traces of terrifying thunder gathered, colliding and lingering between Su Qin's fist. Chapter 186. Rumble. Su Qin continuously punched out the Five Thunder God Fist. With the Five Thunder God Fist at the heavenly thunder realm, he immediately attracted wisps of lightning power. Su Qin's expression changed slightly. He could feel that as the lightning continued to surge into his body gradually became numb, as if billions of ants were constantly gnawing on him. My physical body is getting stronger. Su Qin was shocked and joy appeared on his face. He could clearly feel that his body, which had been stagnant, was actually improving at a slow but firm speed. A moment later, Su Qin had completely adapted to this level of lightning entering his body. It's too slow, too slow. Su Qin shook his head and frowned slightly. If his physical body improved slowly at this speed, he could indeed complete the fifth transformation, but that would take at least a few decades. After all, this improvement would only happen when it was rainy and lightning gathered. And such weather might not happen even once in a few dozen days. Thinking of this, Su Qin looked up at the dark clouds in the sky. With my physical body, even without the 5 Thunder God Fist weakening it, it will be fine to withstand some lightning. Besides, I have the flesh rebirth ability, so I don't need to be so cautious. Su Qin's thoughts fluctuated. Originally, he was going to adapt for a few hours before thinking about other things and going further with the thunder body tempering art. But now, Su Qin already knew where the limit of the thunder body tempering art was. The thunder body tempering art is not difficult for me at all. There is no need to adapt at all. Su Qin stopped the 5 Thunder God Fist and looked up at the endless dark clouds. Directly enter the dark clouds and proceed with the last step of the thunder body tempering art. Boom! Su Qin turned into a bolt of lightning and rushed into the dark clouds. Whoosh! Lightning exploded and surged like dragons and snakes. Ha ha! That's more like it. Su Qin's eyes were burning. Feeling the rapid improvement of his physical body, he began to perform the 5 Thunder God Fist again. At the same time, just as Su Qin rushed into the dark clouds and used the thunder body tempering art, a man in a blue robe slowly walked into Chang'an City. Is this the capital of the Empire of Tang? The blue-robed man was none other than the martial arts legend who had returned from overseas. During this period of time, the blue-robed man had roughly walked around the continent and learned that the Empire of Tang was the most powerful country in the world. Therefore, if the blue-robed man wanted to control the continent under his feet, the simplest way was to control the Empire of Tang. After all, even if he was a martial arts legend, it was impossible for him to build a force that could sweep across the mainland in a short period of time. Since that was the case, why not just take over the Empire of Tang directly? It would be easy and simple. This was the purpose of the blue-robed man's visit to Chang. As for whether the Empire of Tang would agree or not, the blue-robed man didn't even consider it. In his opinion, as a martial arts legend from overseas where martial arts flourished, he wanted to enter the Empire of Tang. What ability did the other party have to refuse? It is said that the Empire of Tang has given birth to a legend? The blue-robed man thought absent-mindedly. During this period of traveling around the continent, he didn't do nothing. At least he heard some information, especially about the legend in Chang'an City. In the rumors that the blue-robed man heard, the legend in Chang'an City could shatter heaven and earth with a raise of his hand, and his divine power was like that of a god. Humph! A group of fools. Casually treating a new legend as an immortal god. A trace of contempt appeared on the blue-robed man's face. Martial arts flourished overseas. Although legends were also rare, there were many in the major sects, and in addition to the major sects, there were also many legends rogue cultivators. How could it be like the Empire of Tang, where only one legend was born every few hundred years? But even the existence of the leader of the major sects dared not compare himself to a god. The road to legend is difficult. Many of the major sects control the martial arts resources, but even so, most of the legends in these major sects stop at the third heaven. As the blue-robed man walked, he thought in his heart. However, this legend of the Empire of Tang was able to enter the legend realm in this barren continent. Obviously, he has some aptitude and comprehension. The blue-robed man nodded slightly to express his affirmation. Before the recovery of the Yuan Qi tide, the Yuan Qi on this continent was scarce, and there was almost no spiritual opportunity. To be able to take that step in such an environment where almost all methods were cut off, not to mention other things, Just the determination to go against the current was praiseworthy. If I meet this legend later, I may not necessarily kill him. If the other party is willing to follow me, I can give him a chance. The blue-robed man thought in his heart. From the beginning to the end, the blue-robed man had never considered whether he had enough strength to kill the other party. For the blue-robed man, he came from overseas where martial arts flourished. Over there, whether it was the secret arts or the vision, he didn't know how much better it was than this continent. Not to mention that the blue-robed man had already reached the third heavenly layer of the mythical realm. Even overseas, he was considered a powerhouse, second only to the elders and guardians of the great sects. How could he not be able to deal with a mythical realm native from a small place? But why haven't I felt the aura of that legend until now? The blue-robed man suddenly frowned. Could it be that the other party is not here, but has left? The blue-robed man guessed in his heart. Forget it. Go directly to the Emperor of Tang Palace. Whether the legend is there or not, I will directly suppress with absolute force. Thinking of this, the blue-robed man turned and walked toward the Emperor of Tang Palace. With the strength of the blue-robed man, it was naturally easy to avoid the patrolling forbidden army. In less than a moment, the blue-robed man had already entered the palace. The next moment, the blue-robed man rose into the sky and stood above the palace, overlooking the entire palace. Not bad. There are a few peak grade 1. The blue-robed man constantly scanned with his divine sense. There is a physique with clear meridians? Even if he were to be placed overseas, he would still be able to join those great sects. The blue-robed man's divine sense instantly focused on Li Wan. Not bad, not bad. As expected of a place of great strife. The blue-robed man was very satisfied. Why is there a place where my divine sense can't penetrate? The blue-robed man seemed to have noticed something and looked in the direction of the East Palace. Heaven and Earth formation? The blue-robed man muttered to himself. It seems that the legend is hiding in the Heaven and Earth formation. No wonder I can't feel his aura. Just when the blue-robed man was ready to break the Heaven and Earth formation and then suppress the legend of the Empire of Tang and give the other party a chance to follow him. Voila! One drop of rain after another kept pouring down. An invisible barrier appeared on the blue-robed man's body, blocking all the rain outside. It's raining? The blue-robed man subconsciously looked up at the sky and looked at the cloudy sky. However, the blue-robed man's calm expression froze in an instant as he looked at her. Under the blue-robed man's shocked gaze, he saw that in the depths of the endless dark clouds, a blurry figure was constantly punching out one punch after another. Each punch had a large number of lightning entwined and collided, bursting out countless rays of light. The blurry figure was like a thunder god descending, personally demonstrating the fist technique in the sea of lightning. The aura of the Supreme Yang shot straight into the sky. What is this? The blue-robed man was stunned on the spot and trembled all over. P.S. Thank you to the Alliance Master of I Am Ligu from Chidian for the reward. I only saw it today. I am ashamed. Thank you to the author for the reward. Thank you, thank you, thank you to the author for the reward. Thank you, thank you. Chapter 187. Chang'an City. The man in the blue robe was dumbfounded and his face was full of horror. In the dark clouds, lightning was everywhere. Even if it was a legend who could fly in the sky and burrow into the ground, if they rushed in, they would be annihilated. Even the man in the blue robe didn't dare to approach the dark clouds with his divine sense, for fear of being attacked by the lightning and damaging his divine sense. But at this moment, what the man in the blue robe dreamed of was that someone had entered the dark clouds, ignored the lightning, and demonstrated a fist technique. If this were to spread to the overseas martial arts world, it would definitely make a group of legends horrified. Illusion. The man in the blue robe rejected this idea as soon as it appeared in his mind. If it was an ordinary person, they might have hallucinations, but he was a third heavenly layer legend with perfect essence, chi, and spirit. How could he have hallucinations? Is there really a god in this world? The man in the blue robe thought quickly and felt his whole body stiffen. As a martial artist, especially a legend, Logically speaking, his martial arts will was firm, and he only believed in himself and not external things, but the scene in front of him was too sensational. No, it's not a god. At this moment, the man in the blue robe seemed to have discovered something, and his face changed again. Because he saw one terrifying lightning after another constantly pouring into the body of the vague figure. This vague figure in the endless dark clouds was like a black hole that devoured everything, constantly absorbing the lightning. In front of the blurry figure, the lightning that could make an ordinary legend take 3 steps back was extremely obedient, and did not go berserk. Lightning body refinement. This is lightning body refinement. The man in the blue robe swallowed his saliva, and his heart trembled. Could it be that this lord is one of the ancestors of Raytheon? The man in the blue robe couldn't help but think. Raytheon was one of the major sects in the overseas martial arts world, and it controlled countless overseas martial arts cultivation resources. It was said that Raytheon's core cultivation method was to control lightning and punish on behalf of the heavens, which was extremely terrifying. However, what puzzled the man in the blue robe was that Raytheon's disciples, even the sect master, only controlled lightning and did not devour it. But in any case, at this moment, the vague figure standing in the endless dark clouds was the most similar to Raytheon overseas, and the man in the blue robe could only rely on Raytheon. Damn it. Didn't Raytheon's group always look down on the Tianji sect? Why are you reacting so quickly this time? The blue-robed man felt bitter in his heart. Originally, he had thought that since he was the first to arrive on this continent, he would be able to lay out his plans in advance. Once the origin energy recovered and the battlefield revealed its extraordinariness, he would be able to obtain enough benefits. At that time, even if the major sects overseas reacted, he would be able to escape unscathed. But now, Raytheon's reaction was even faster than his. Long before he set foot on this continent, Raytheon had probably already taken control of the Empire of Tang. What should I do now? The blue-robed man's thoughts fluctuated. Facing a colossus like Raytheon, no matter how unwilling the blue-robed man was, he could only concede. When the senior comes down, I'll give in. We're both overseas myths, so even Raytheon shouldn't make things difficult for me. The blue-robed man made up his mind and prepared to wait patiently for a while before greeting the thunderbolt-devouring senior Raytheon in the endless dark clouds. The blue-robed man wanted to turn around and leave now, but at this moment, he had already broken into Raytheon's territory. If he left directly, it would obviously be a provocation to Raytheon. In that case, he might as well stay. Besides, the blue-robed man vaguely sensed that he had been enveloped by a faintly discernible aura. Even if he wanted to leave, he was afraid that he couldn't. A few hours later, the dark clouds in the sky slowly dissipated. Under the respectful gaze of the man in the blue robe, Su Qin slowly walked down from the void, neither hurriedly nor slowly. Rogue Cultivator Ruan Qing greets Senior Raytheon. The blue-robed man Ruan Qing bowed. Su Qin didn't speak, but quietly experienced the changes in his body. After being refined by thunder, his body at this moment was faintly flashing with lightning, which made people's hearts palpitate. When the blue-robed man Ruan Qing saw this, he became even more respectful. Although he didn't know why Su Qin could devour thunderbolts, in Ruan Qing's eyes, Su Qin was at least one of Raytheon's most ancient ancestors. This time, Raytheon had invited Su Qin out of his deep slumber in order to seize the great struggle. Raytheon? I'm not Raytheon's man. Su Qin carefully sensed for a while, then looked at the blue-robed man Ruan Qing and casually said, "What? Senior isn't from Raytheon?" The blue-robed man Ruan Qing's expression stiffened. In his eyes, besides Raytheon, no one could compare to Su Qin's ability to immerse himself in the endless sea of lightning. If Su Qin wasn't Raytheon's senior, then which great sect did he come from? Then which great sect did senior come from? The blue-robed man Ruan Qing stammered and mustered his courage to ask. Great sect? Su Qin shook his head slightly. I'm not from any great sect either. As soon as these words came out, the blue-robed man Ruan Qing was suddenly stunned. In a flash, an incredible thought suddenly flashed through Ruan Qing's mind. Senior, "Are you the legend who oversees Chang and City?" the blue-robed man Ruanqing asked in a trembling voice. Hearing this, Su Qin glanced at Ruanqing with a faint smile and didn't answer. However, Su Qin's expression, in Ruanqing's view, was no different from admitting it. At this moment, Ruanqing's heart went cold. If Su Qin was a legend from overseas, he might have let him go. But now, Su Qin had revealed his identity as the legend who had been overseeing Chang and City, so there was no reason to let him go. "Okay. I'll give you two choices." Su Qin looked at Ruanqing with interest. "The first is to die, and the second is to serve me. Choose one." Although Su Qin had been refining his body with thunder in the depths of the dark clouds, he had been watching Ruanqing's every move after entering Chang and City. Although Su Qin didn't know Ruanqing's purpose, he could feel that he didn't have any good intentions. Under such circumstances, Su Qin naturally wouldn't let him go. The reason why he gave Ruanqing the second choice was because he was a level 3 legend. Although a third heavenly layer divine realm cultivator was still not worth mentioning in Su Qin's eyes, he could barely be considered a powerhouse. Before Su Qin, there hadn't been a legend in the world for hundreds of years. A level 3 legend like Ruanqing, the blue-robed man, would definitely be able to shake the world in normal times. Su Qin had subdued Ruanqing, so if there was anything in the future, he didn't need to do it himself. He could just leave it to Ruanqing. Chapter 188. The blue-robed Ruanqing's expression changed as he struggled internally. He completely believed that Su Qin had the means to kill him. Disregarding the ability to bathe in lightning earlier, just the aura that Su Qin casually revealed was enough to make Ruanqing feel as if he was facing the vast sky. In the end, Ruanqing's desire to live overcame everything. He bowed to Su Qin and said, "I'm willing to serve Senior. But don't resist." With a thought, Su Qin separated a strand of divine will and planted it into Ruanqing's body. This strand of divine will was created by Su Qin based on the great Dao Heart demonic seed art in the heavenly devil tome. It could be deeply rooted in Ruanqing's mind. In the future, if Ruanqing had any thoughts of betrayal, this strand of divine will would explode and destroy Ruanqing's divine will. Of course, it was not that Ruanqing did not have a way to break it. If Ruanqing could surpass Su Qin in terms of cultivation level, he could temporarily suppress this strand of divine will. But with Su Qin's cultivation speed, this method was almost impossible to achieve. "Master." Ruanqing felt a strange aura settle down. He sighed in his heart and said respectfully to Su Qin. In fact, Ruanqing still had a trace of hope, but now he had completely surrendered. "All right. Let's talk when we get back." Su Qin glanced at the sky. Now that the clouds had passed, it would soon be daytime. Thinking of this, Su Qin brought Ruanqing back to the Eastern Palace. The moment they entered the Eastern Palace, the world changed. Vitality was abundant, and qi filled the air. It was as if they had arrived at a paradise. "This is?" Ruanqing's eyes widened in disbelief. There are at least dozens of heaven and earth great formations superimposed on everything. With so many heaven and earth great formations fused perfectly, even those true formation masters overseas cannot compare to this. Ruanqing was extremely shocked. When he first entered the palace, he had sensed the heaven and earth great formation enveloping the Eastern Palace. But at that time, because of the heaven and earth great formation, Ruanqing could not discover more. However, after entering the heaven and earth grand formation, Ruanqing was completely astonished. He originally thought that Su Qin was only proficient in the Tao of lightning, but now it seemed that Su Qin's involvement in array formations had also reached an unimaginable level. It should be known that the more heaven and earth formations there were, the better. This was because different heaven and earth formations would repel each other. Su Qin was able to perfectly merge dozens of heaven and earth formations together without any conflict. This was simply incredible. At the very least, Ruanqing had never heard of such an array master overseas. The vitality qi is so dense, and the qi is so pervasive. It's not any weaker than the outer seas. The more Ruanqing looked, the more shocked she became. It should be noted that the reason why overseas martial arts had been thriving all year round and gave birth to one martial arts legend after another was because of the rich vitality and pervasive qi. But now, Ruan Qing suddenly realized that the Eastern Palace, which was enveloped by the heaven and earth formation, could almost be seen as a smaller version of the overseas martial arts world. Have you seen enough? Su Qin glanced at the dumbfounded Ruan Qing and said indifferently, Master, I've seen enough. Ruan Qing's face turned pale, and he immediately bowed and stood still. Since you've seen enough, I have a few questions for you. Su Qin raised his head slightly, and suddenly the air in all directions began to distort, completely isolating them from the outside world. Su Qin's purpose of subduing Ruan Qing was not only because of his strength, but also because he was an overseas legend. How is the situation overseas now? Su Qin asked casually. What is Master referring to? Ruan Qing asked cautiously. Just saying. Su Qin said lightly. Okay. Ruan Qing thought for a while, as if organizing his words. Now, the overseas martial arts world is controlled by the major sects, and in addition to the major sects, there are also some itinerant cultivators. These itinerant cultivators are unwilling to join the major sects and work for them, so they formed their own forces. Some time ago, the divine predictor of this generation of the Tianji sect predicted that the recovery of the tide of vitality was imminent, and pointed out the location of the great battle during the recovery of the tide of vitality. When Ruan Qing said this, she couldn't help but glance at Su Qin and continued. Although Tianji's prophecy has spread throughout the entire overseas, no one believes it. It's just that I once found a few words left behind by a powerful overseas powerhouse on an island, and realized that Tianji's prophecy is likely to be true, so I rushed to this continent. You mean this continent is the place of the great battle? Su Qin continued to ask thoughtfully. Exactly. Ruan Qing bowed. The divine predictor's prophecy is vague, but I checked countless ancient books and locked onto this place among the many continents. I just didn't expect that Master's means are so great that you found this place so long before the divine predictor. Ruan Qing said respectfully. At this moment, in Ruan Qing's heart, Su Qin must have known something, so he came to this continent early. Otherwise, with Su Qin's ability, even if he went to the overseas martial arts world, he would be worshipped by the sect masters of the major sections. How could he stay on this continent? Many continents? Su Qin repeated. Yes, Master. But almost all of these continents have thin vitality, far inferior to the overseas martial arts world. Ruan Qing immediately replied. What is the strength of those major sects, and what is the level of the strongest expert? Su Qin suddenly changed the topic and asked. This was also what Su Qin had always wanted to know. Originally, he thought that the strongest expert overseas was at most the 5th or 6th heavenly layer, but listening to Ruan Qing, the overseas martial arts world seemed to be far more prosperous than he thought. The major sects overseas have a deep heritage and have been passed down for thousands of years. There are many legends in the sect, and the deputy sect masters and elders are generally 4th heavenly layer legends. As for the sect master, only a 5th heavenly layer legend is qualified to be the sect master. 5th heavenly layer? So weak. Su Qin's expression didn't change. What else? Su Qin continued to ask. In addition to these, it is said that in the depths of the various high sects, there are their own ancestors in deep slumber. These ancestors are extremely powerful and are the final foundation of the high sections. Unless it is absolutely necessary, the high sects will absolutely not awaken the ancestors in their sections. Ruan Qing said truthfully. When he first saw Su Qin, he thought that Su Qin was Raytheon's ancestor. But now, it seemed that Ruan Qing had given up this idea. This was because the old ancestors of the exalted sects were all nearing the end of their lifespans. It was impossible for them to be as vigorous as Su Qin. I see. Su Qin nodded slightly. Then Su Qin asked about the strength of these ancestors, but Ruan Qing didn't know. The only thing he knew was that they were very strong, at least more powerful than the 5th heavenly layer legends. In the end, Su Qin looked at Ruan Qing with a solemn expression and asked in a deep voice, "Then do you know if there is an Earth Immortal overseas?" P.S. There are still 2 more chapters. Don't panic, it will be released around noon. Welcome to Legends of Cultivation audiobooks, where we bring ancient fantasy to life through storytelling. Follow the rise of heroes who defy fate, unlock mystical powers, and battle across celestial realms. Our audiobooks are crafted for fans of Chinese cultivation novels, filled with battles, breakthroughs, and legendary artifacts. Subscribe and be part of an unforgettable journey into the realm of immortality.